I survived 3 hours of terrifying night shift horror stories as the rain whispered dark secrets. I never should have opened that door. The feeling gripped me tight, a knot in my stomach. It was just another night shift at the old clinic, but something felt off. Shadows danced like ghosts on the walls. I could hear the rain tapping sharply against the windows, mixing with the eerie silence that enveloped me. I hated those gaps in noise. They always came before something awful. The cold crept in, chilling my bones, despite the heater struggling to keep the room warm. I wiped my clammy hands on my scrubs and glanced around. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, haunting shadows. I tried to push the creeping sense of dread away. It was just my imagination, right? But then, I heard it a whisper. It was soft, almost like someone was breathing my name. My heart raced. I leaned toward the source, half expecting to see the head nurse, Karen, with a concerned look. But the hallway was empty. Just me and the echo of that voice lingering like smoke, out of nowhere. A loud clang jolted through the quiet, making me jump. A metal tray from the supply room had crashed to the floor. I swear I saw it move on its own, like it was pushed by unseen hands. My legs felt like lead as I took a cautious step towards the room. Cold sweat trickled down my back. I could smell the sterile antiseptic, but it didn't ease my nerves. It felt suffocating. The whispers returned, more insistent now. Shadows shifted in my periphery. I turned quickly. Nothing was there. My breath quickened. My mind raced with the horrors I'd heard about this place. Strange tales of nights like this, filled with accidents, vanishings, stories drenched in blood. I wouldn't let it get to me, just breathe. But then I saw it. A figure just at the edge of the light. A fleeting glimpse. No face, just a shadow, motionless. I shivered, and my instincts screamed at me to run. But I couldn't. My feet felt glued to the linoleum floor. Darkness seeped further as the lights flickered again. A panicked stutter. I started to back away when suddenly bang. The doors to the clinic slammed shut. My heart dropped. In that instant, I felt it. That presence looming, heavy. A cold hand pressed down on my shoulder. I could almost feel the breath against my neck. Chills consumed me. I was not alone. Then I screamed. An echo pierced the silence. As the lights went out, plunging me into total darkness, I thought, was this real? A sick trick of my mind? Or was something truly out there, waiting for me to make the wrong move? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I stumbled back, my heart thundering in my chest, as the darkness wrapped around me like a shroud. The claustrophobic silence was maddening. Every breath I took echoed off the walls, taunting me, reminding me of my isolation in this forsaken place. My hands trembled as I fumbled for the flashlight clipped to my belt. With a swift motion, I unclipped it and flicked it on, the beam piercing through the thick blackness like a desperate prayer. The light illuminated the hallway, revealing peeling paint and unsettling stains that dripped down the walls like dark memories. I swung the flashlight around, trying to shake the feeling that eyes were watching, lurking in the shadows beyond the reach of the beam. Stay calm, I whispered to myself, though my voice trembled. It's just a power outage. Just the storm. But as I made my way back towards the supply room, the air changed. It thickened, became heavy, as if each breath was filled with dread. The whispers returned, clearer this time. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakably pleading. I gripped the flashlight firmer, the beam flickering as if responding to the intensity of my fear. Then, a crash echoed behind me. It sounded like glass shattering. I whipped around, the flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. landing on a broken vial lying on the floor. Its contents pooled in shimmering puddles, staining the linoleum with a fluid that sparkled sinisterly in the light. Kneeling, I reached out to get a closer look. Was it a drug? Poison? My heart raced as I realized the name on the label was smudged, almost as if someone had tried to erase it. Suddenly, the light flickered again, and in that fraction of time, I saw a facia gaunt visage peering from the far end of the corridor. Its hollow eyes bore into me, cold and void of life, lips moving as if trying to speak, yet no sound escaped. My blood went cold. The air was colder than before, stinging my skin, and I stumbled back, bumping into the supply room door, forcing it ajar. Panicked, I stepped inside, the flashlight beam barely illuminating the rows of shelves filled with supplies. The door creaked ominously as it swung shut behind me. I turned to lock it, but the mechanism felt warped, rusted, as if it hadn't worked in years. It was only then that I noticed the grime beneath my fingernails, the remnants of something unnatural I had brushed against. I scanned the room, breathing shallowly, my mind racing. What was happening? The weight of dread pressed harder on my chest, and the whispers grew louder, morphing into incoherent moans that reverberated off the walls. It was as if the very air was haunted with lost souls. That I turned my flashlight toward the farthest shelf, where a silhouette seemed to emerge, shifting among boxes and crumpled bags. My heart stopped. It was the figure from earlier, now closer, its outline blurry and indistinct as though it was struggling to maintain shape. Fear clawed at my throat as I stumbled backward, but there was nowhere else to go. I was trapped. Suddenly, the fluorescent lights flickered back to life, bathing the room in a harsh light. My eyes widened in horror. The figure was gone, but the atmosphere was thick with an unspeakable dread. That's when I noticed the reflection in the metallic surface of the cabinets. There it was. The gnarled face, twisted in agony, was etched in stark detail. But when I turned back, the room was empty again. Breath caught in my throat. I stumbled toward the door. I had to get out. I dashed for the entrance, panic surging. But as I reached for the handle, it was cold, too cold. I pulled, but it wouldn't budge. "Let me out," I shouted, desperation clawing at my voice. Something twisted in my gut, a primal instinct telling me I was not alone. Through the glass window adjacent to the door, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a nurse's uniform, stained with blood, lurking just outside the threshold. I turned back, my body frozen in terror. And that's when I heard it, clear as a child's laughter, echoing softly through the clinic, wrapping around me like a sinister lullaby. The laughter grew louder, morphing into sobs, and I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in, and I couldn't discern if the cries were real or figments of my racing mind. I turned back to the door, ready to scream again, when a chilling gust of wind blasted through the cracks, snuffing out my light. Darkness swallowed me whole. Then, an ice-cold breath tickled my ear, closer now. "You shouldn't have opened that door," a voice hissed, and just like that, 1,000 tiny pinpricks pierced my skin, leaving me paralyzed in exhilarating horror. And then I felt something shifting in the air behind me. It was there. Whatever haunted this clinic was no longer just around me. It was in me. As panic swelled, I turned to face the encroaching darkness, my mind racing for answers. But the figure emerged, closer than ever, eyes aglow, and a wicked smile spreading across its face. I barely had time to scream before everything went black, and I vanished into the chilling night, lost amid the laughter and whispers of that cursed night shift. I awoke to a cruel, white light glaring down from above, blinding me. My limbs felt heavy, as if I were submerged in thick syrup, and my heart thrummed violently against my ribs. The chill in the air seeped into my bones, every breath a bitter reminder of the terror I had escaped. But my escape felt tenuous, as though my very essence was still tethered to that malevolent entity. The room around me was disorienting. Sterile like a hospital but twisted. The walls were lined with tiled panels that flickered and hummed, and shadows danced in sync with the overhead lights, warping and twisting in a grotesque choreography. I blinked, straining to remember how I had gotten here. Hadn't I been trapped? That otherworldly presence? I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that whatever I had faced wasn't finished with me yet. Get out, the whispered mantra curled around me, suffocating my sanity. I struggled to sit up, groaning as pain licked at my side. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. I glanced down to find fresh, crimson stains soaking through my shirt. Panic surged as my fingers brushed across jagged wounds, the remnants of whatever had marked me in that supply room. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice cracking like dry parchment, barely echoing against the walls. The shadows shifted, swaying with an unnatural rhythm, beckoning me deeper into the maze of suspended horror. I forced my legs over the edge of the gurney, heart racing with each heartbeat, cold sweat pooling at my brow. I had to move, had to escape with gritted teeth. I stumbled toward the door, swaying precariously. The hallway beyond was obscured in dark mist, swirling like an angry sea, blurring the edges of reality. With a shove, I pushed the door open, flinching as the hinges screamed in protest. My body felt stripped of strength, but desperation propelled me forward, away from the confines of that room as I stepped into the corridor. The lights flickered once more, casting long shadows that crawled along the walls. The air pulsed with electric tension, accented by the sound of dripping water echoing somewhere nearby, creating a rhythm that matched the pounding of my heart. The whispers swelled, coaxing me to turn back, merging into a chorus of tormented souls urging me to join them. "Please," I muttered, feeling the walls constrict around me. "Please let me go." My words hung in the frigid air, swallowed by the malevolent ambience that thickened with every step I took. A door loomed ahead, slightly ajar, casting an inviting glow I could barely decipher what lay inside. Were they saving me, or were they part of the nightmare? I hesitated, but the whispers turned to screaming, a cacophony of despair that shattered my resolve. I pushed the door wide, bursting into a room that was disturbingly bright, the flickering lights now stable. Rows of beds lined the space, draped in crisp, white sheets and a single, flickering lamp casting an eerie light across the faces of the patients, except they weren't moving. My breath hitched. Their eyes stared blankly, hollow and vacant, as if their souls had been plucked from them like ripe fruit. Suddenly, from one of the beds, a figure stirred. It was a child, hair matted and eyes wide. The boy clutched a teddy bear, its fur stained with a deep, dark red. "Help them," he whispered, pointing to the nearest bed. My heart raced as I felt that insistent pull towards him. This innocent amidst the sea of suffering. "What happened here?" I croaked. "They won't let you go unless you help them." The boy's voice was a haunting melody of innocence twisted with something darker. He blinked slowly, and suddenly, his lips curled into a small smile. It was in that moment that I felt it. The chill radiating from the other beds, each one suffused with despair and corruption, seeped into my skin, igniting something familiar yet terrifying deep within me. Behind me, the sound of the door slamming shut reverberated ominously. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, to flee this child and this room. A wave of shadows poured in, merging with the forms of the patients, their mouths opening in silent screams as their bodies contorted. They were not merely victims. They were alive with rage, their souls ensnared in this dreary existence, begging for my help. And then, from the depths of the room, another figure emerged, taller, shrouded in darkness. Its face twisted in recognition. The gaunt shape filled the doorway, and I knew it wasn't there to aid me. "Hello again," it hissed, voice sharp like brittle glass. "You're far from done, dear." I felt cold fingers wrapping around my throat, squeezing tight, as despair surged through the room like a tidal wave, pulling me under. I could see the boy's eyes widening, horror etching itself across his features, but I couldn't take my gaze away from the approaching terror. "Now we can play," it snarled, and in that moment the walls began to bleed. My last thought was a desperate plea for escape as I felt myself being engulfed by the dark tide, swallowed by the laughter of the damned and echoes of frantic whispers clawing at my mind. And in the throes of terror, I screamed as the darkness enveloped me, the snarl of the entity reverberating in my ears like a death knell and leaving me hanging on the precipice of the unimaginable. What was it that thrived in the dark? And would my scream be the final sound before the light consumed me forever? I felt the icy grip tighten around my throat as black specks danced in my vision. The entity looming closer, a figure draped in shifting shadows. Its face twisted into a grotesque grin, and a bone-chilling laughter echoed through the air, its voice a sinister symphony of dread and chaos. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, trapped in a paralyzing nightmare that felt all too real. In the distance, I heard a soft whimper, and the boy's voice broke through the fog of my mind, trembling yet indomitable. "Don't let it in. Fight." He pointed a tiny finger toward the shadows that spilled across the floor, their form undulating like oil in water, reaching for me. I could feel their cold tendrils brushing against my ankles, igniting a firestorm of panic within. Desperation fueled me then. I buried my fear and whirled around, wrenching myself free from the fingers choking my breath. The walls shuddered as if the very building itself was alive with malevolence, and I stumbled backward. I was blind, but my adrenaline-fueled instincts took charge. With an anguished shout, I lunged forward, fueled by pure terror and instinct to survive. As I twisted past the encroaching darkness, the flickering lights above glared down like accusing eyes. I fled through the space, tearing through the rows of silent beds, the vacant gazes following me. Every breath stung, a bitter reminder of my own frailty as I reached the far wall, desperate for an escape. "Help them!" The boy cried out, his innocent face marred with terror. "They can save you." But I couldn't look back. I couldn't afford to hesitate. The entity was no longer just in my mind. It was a tangible force, searching, hungry for the fear that filled me. The corridor beckoned like the mouth of a greedy beast. I dashed toward the door at the end, frantically pushing against it, the wood creaking ominously. With a final prayer, I thrust the door open. The air beyond was cooler, again blanketed by oppressive shadows that stretched into the dimness. The hallway wasn't much more than a tunnel of despair, yet it offered the promise of escape. I rushed in as the whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of anguish, pulling my mind apart. But as I ran deeper into the abyss, I noticed strange markings on the walls, symbols etched into the plaster, worn by time and dripping with what looked like dark remnants of moss. My heart quickened as I tried to decipher them, knowing that understanding this horror might be the key to my survival. Each symbol seemed to pulse with dark energy, like a heartbeat that synchronized with my own mounting dread. A distant sound stopped me in my tracks. The low, guttural growl I had come to dread. The entity had pursued me into this wretched corridor, and I could feel it closing the distance, its breath a cold chill against the back of my neck. Panic clawed at my sanity. I needed to move. Suddenly, a door off to my left swung open, spilling a thin ray of dim light into the hallway. Heart pounding against the cage of my ribs, I darted inside, slamming the door shut behind me. The room was cramped, lined with shelves bursting with old books, their covers dust-covered and worn, an overwhelming stench of mildew pervading the air. In the center stood a small table where several candles flickered uncertainly, shadows leaping wildly around the room. I scanned the spines of the books, looking for answers. They promised knowledge, arcane rituals, and the truths of an existence buried under unfathomable fear. But, in the darkest corner of my mind, a new anxiety gnawed. What price would I have to pay for such knowledge? The whispers had not faded. They grew louder, cohesive, turning into a single voice that echoed with unbearable sorrow. Release us," they begged, and each utterance pulled me deeper into their despair. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I saw a book bound in worn leather, its title illegible, suggesting deeper horrors within. With trembling hands, I reached for it, drawing it from the shelf. The moment I touched it, a jolt of cold raced up my arm, and the candles flickered violently. The shadows in the room coalesced, forming a figure behind me, its form indistinct but undeniably therein amalgamation of the souls that had been lost. I could feel their rage boiling over, their unfulfilled desires manifesting in the thick air, suffocating me. "Help us, free us," they chanted, the walls shaking. The floor thudded ominously beneath my feet as terror unfurled. and I knew that whatever power I held by unearthing this knowledge could just as easily consume me. And then the whispering stopped, replaced with an ominous silence, as if the shadows themselves were holding their breath, waiting. I turned abruptly, the book still clutched tightly in my trembling hands, only to find myself face to face with the entity once more. It stood grinning, its eyes a hollow void that promised torment. "Did you think you could hide?" it taunted, stretching its long fingers toward me. My heart raced, and in that instant, I realized the horror of my arrogance. I was never meant to find escape, but rather to join them. The walls began to pulse as if the very building were alive and aware of my terror. I could see the reflections in the shadows, the faces of those once living, now lost in time, victims of the entity that sought to claim me. "Now you will understand," it whispered, and the room began to twist around me, plunging into an abyssal darkness where shadows seemed to swallow sound itself. In the depths of that void, I felt the book slip from my fingers, forgotten in my flight, lost among the shadows that threatened to consume me whole. My scream echoed back, raw and broken, and I was left suspended in terror, a single heartbeat away from being swept into that eternal darkness. And there, amidst the cacophony of lost souls begging for release, came a final voice, clearer than the rest, whispering my name. It was familiar, intimate, and altogether terrifying. I knew who it belonged to, and it wasn't just a whisper that beckoned. It was a promise of reunion, the chilling reminder that I was never truly alone. As the shadows enveloped me fully, I braced myself for the unimaginable, knowing that the next moment would unravel everything I once believed about the horror that lurked within. Would I succumb to the darkness, or were there forces I had yet to understand that could either save or damn us all? And just as I thought I had surrendered completely, the entity's laughter echoed once more, a final mockery of hope. The darkness stretched on in a suffocating embrace, a living quilt woven of nightmares. I felt myself sink deeper, no longer a prisoner of just fear, but entwined within a tapestry of despair and longing. The shadows thrummed with an energy I could almost taste, thick and metallic, stinging the back of my throat as my vision blurred. A sudden flare of recognition ignited within me, a feeling so profound and overwhelming, it pierced through the silent chaos. Mixed within the disordered anguish of the lost souls was something familiar, almost protective. A warmth rising from the depths of despair, promising sanctuary. But as quickly as it came, it retreated, leaving me cold and aware that the entity was an omnipresent malevolence. Never ceasing in its pursuit of my surrender, I felt pulled in two directions, toward the memories of loved ones long gone, and toward the whispering shadows, urging me to give in. Panic swelled within me. If I lingered too long in this void, would I lose myself entirely to the darkness? Help us, came a symphony of voices, layered and blending together, each word a thread that tightened around my mind. Then, one voice resounded louder than the others, its tone urgent and pleading, a lifeline in the tempest. "They won't let you go. Don't trust their promises." I turned, searching for the source of this newfound clarity. Just beyond the swirling blackness, through the writhing shapes scraping against my consciousness, I caught a glimpse of a flickering light, a beacon amidst the overwhelming dark. It called to me, throbbing with the rhythm of hope, and I willed my exhausted limbs to grip onto that semblance of light, as if it were an anchor against the tide. But the entity sensed my resolve. Its laughter, grotesque and echoing, crescendoed around me, a cacophony of malice. "Fleeing won't save you," it hissed, its words slithering like serpents. "You belong to me now." Just as the tendrils of shadow lunged once more, snapping like vipers, I erupted forward, toward the light, abandoning the darkness swirling around me. Every desperate step sent jolts of pain vying for my attention, each flicker of my heartbeat echoing in haunting rhythm with the entities that lurked behind me. Was the light real, an escape, or merely an illusion spun from my mind? The flicker grew stronger, burning with a will of its own as I tore through the void. The shadows shattered around me, dissipating in my wake, but the laughter pursued, relentless and mocking. Each beat of my heart seemed to thrum against the very fabric of the dark, and with each pulse, the entity's presence roared, furious that its grasp was slipping. Then, as I neared that shining hope, I was seized by the weight of despair that enveloped me, dragging me backward. Suddenly, I burst free from the darkness and stumbled into a room that felt impossibly familiar yet distinctly wrong. It was the same room, the candlelit space with bookshelves that towered overhead, just as I had entered before, but now it felt turned inside out, as if the arrangement itself had been twisted into a parody of what was once safe. That I blinked, disoriented. Had I returned to the same place I had fled from, or was it a clever ruse set by the dark entity? The candles flickered wildly, struggling against a gust of wind that shouldn't exist within these four walls, and then I knew it wasn't quiet. The whispers were still there, weaving through the air thick with tension, coaxing me toward the book that had been lost in the shadows. Your salvation lies within. They beckoned softly, and a shadowy figure stepped forth from behind the shelves, a grotesque imitation of the boy from before, his face twisted in anguish. You must complete the offering, or all will be lost. That I staggered back as realization struck with cruel clarity. The entity wanted my soul, but perhaps there was something greater at stake, a way to free not just myself, but all the tormented souls caught within this maze of horror. Yet, the way was shrouded in danger and sacrifice. With the boy's eyes pleading for my decision, I felt an overwhelming rush of remorse for all I had left behind. In that instant, I understood what the shadows craved. A trade, a barter in blood and suffering. But at what cost? As the candles flickered out around me, darkness enveloped once more, and the boy's voice echoed, frantic. You're not safe. It's closer than you think. The ground trembled beneath me, and I could hear the growls encroaching with a newfound urgency. Time slipped, and I was left with a dawning horror. What if the choice I had to make meant sealing my fate forever? Then I remembered the book. My fingers curled instinctively around the invisible bindings of knowledge I had released, hiding the answer. In that moment of revelation, I felt a surge of courage interlink with the dread. It was either the path of ignorance, safety in ignorance, or diving headfirst into the abyss offered by forbidden knowledge. And just as I thought I had found clarity, an icy whisper slithered through the air, coiling around my heart. You're running out of time. Time is slipping away. Before I could gather my thoughts, shadows erupted from the corners, wrapping around me with unprecedented fury, locking all exits as the entity roared in triumphant wrath. You will join me. With a heart-stopping pang, I realized that my decision was almost upon me, and with it came the harrowing truth. The true horror was not just the darkness enveloping me, but the bitter choice I now had to make, and its consequences would ripple through realms beyond my understanding. As the shadows coalesced into their horrific shapes, seeking to claim me once and for all, I raised the forgotten book, preparing to unleash whatever monstrous knowledge it harbored, knowing that with each page I turned, worlds might collide in ways I could never foresee. I took a deep breath, my heart ablaze with a singular thought. This was only the beginning. As the shadows writhed, I felt the weight of the book in my trembling grasp. Its spine was cold, sending an electric shock up my arm, as if alive to sense my fear. I glanced at the boy, his face twisted in agony, and I hesitated, uncertainty flooding my heart like poison. Would opening the book unveil answers or deepen my descent into madness? But the entity's howls echoed in the claustrophobic space, a cacophony of desperate screams melding into the ultimate warning. Time was fleeting. I must act now. In a split-second decision, I opened the book wide, expecting to be overwhelmed by the dark script inside. But instead, I was met with an empty Pangea void that mocked my desperation. Panic surged through me. What is this? I gasped. I need answers. The shadows danced furiously, slithering closer, their claws sharpening into grotesque shapes as the boy stepped forward, his mouth opening to plead, the truths hidden in the darkness. You must awaken them. Unsheathing my resolve, I took a ragged breath and traced my finger along the blank page, whispering for the words to emerge. Show me, I commanded, swallowing the terror biting at my throat. The air grew thick and heavy, pulsating as if the very walls were alive, unsure how to respond to my audacity. Suddenly, lines of text spiraled out from my touch, scrawled in a language that felt ancient and dangerously potent. Words began to swirl, filling the emptiness with horrifying imagery, each letter forging into grotesque specters that flickered before my eyes like the frames of a twisted film. Knowledge comes at a price. The entity hissed, its voice serpentine and velvety, wrapping around the shifting letters. Would you defy fate simply to pierce the veil of understanding? I struggled to concentrate, battling the onslaught of darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. As I read, glimpses of tragic events replayed in vivid detail. A family torn asunder, their anguished cries merging with the wails of the desolate. Their faces morphed into the phantoms whispering my name, urging me to finish what I had begun. With a sudden flash, a scene shuddered before me, a murky forest bustling with shadows. I witnessed a sacrifice, the grotesque offering trembling in the clutches of shadowy figures. A child, her eyes wide with terror, gasping for help. She looked directly at me, her mouth forming silent screams that echoed in the hollows of my heart. "Stop!" I cried, wrenching my gaze from the unfolding horror. But the pages kept turning against my will, each image more harrowing than the last, revealing secrets that should have remained buried. The ground trembled beneath me, echoing the chaos exploding on the pages, as the entity's laughter rose to an unbearable pitch. "Join us or be consumed," it taunted, its voice licking at my very essence, a seductive whisper begging my compliance. Around me, the shadows shifted, coiling like serpents, eager to bind me within their dark essence. "Oh!" I screamed, grasping the book tightly, my soul lurching. I couldn't succumb to the darkness. I had to fight. With a surge of defiance, I began to chant the spell I had unwittingly conjured from the book, the volatile energy thrumming at my fingertips. The world around me vibrated violently as darkness screamed in protest, each syllable breathing light into the shadows, threatening to swallow me whole. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the book, torching the suffocating shadows and illuminating the anguished faces that were once entwined with despair. The warmth surged in waves, washing over them, and I realized the boy, his visage twisted by torment, was no longer just a helper. His anguish was a tether to the suffering I needed to sever. But just as I gathered strength to fight, I heard a small, sweet voice from deep within the shadows. "You can't save them, not without losing everything." Chilling realization clutched at my heart. It was the child from the vision, a specter standing at the precipice of my soul's bargain. If I pressed on, would I free the countless damned souls, or would I become their next tormentor, forever? Ensnared in their cries? The answer fluttered in the recesses of my mind, taunting me at the very edge of clarity. Then, abruptly, a deafening roar erupted from the shadows, and all went dark. That I was once again plunged into a tempest of rage and despair, the darkness tearing at me with renewed vigor, as the boy's shape twisted affrightingly. "You have a choice," he cried, his voice splintering as shadows surrounded us. "Make it quickly before it's too late." My heart pounded, each pulse a reminder of my flailing mortality. Free the lost, or let despair consume me? And what hidden truths would awaken if I dared venture deeper into the abyss? An answer eluded me, but as the candlelight flickered once more, I felt the weight of destiny crash upon me. Time was indeed slipping away, and with it, the remnants of my sanity. Before I could breathe, ominous figures began shifting just beyond the flickering light, eyes ablaze with hunger. The walls closed in, and the echoes of laughter magnified, promising chaos ahead. That I stood on a precipice, caught in a web spun of shadows, ready to plunge. My last decision lingered in the air, heavy and stern. Salvation or damnation? The boy's anguished scream erupted into the void, as the shadows surged forward, and everything faded to black. The darkness finally receded from my sight, replaced by a pale, almost dreamlike twilight, as if pulled from the damp embrace of a nightmare. A mist curled around me, shrouding the ground in a baleful embrace. I blinked rapidly, desperate to dispel the lingering haze of despair that thrummed behind my eyelids. What had happened to the boy? To my soul's bargain? The air was impossibly still, as if holding its breath in anticipation. That I swallowed hard, my throat dry as parchment. The taste of faint ashes lingered in the back of my mouth. My heart raced, beating a frantic rhythm that felt foreign in this heavy silence. The walls around me had transformed, no longer the grotesque shapes of screaming faces and writhing shadows. Instead, they appeared dull and unassuming. Yet I knew they concealed secrets just as potent, hidden behind layers of ancient stone. Each step I took reverberated across the cobblestones, the small sound echoing infinitely against the encroaching gloom. I flinched at each rustle of the mist, as if I awakened something dormant. The child's voice echoed in my mind, her words soft yet insistent, "You can't save them, not without losing everything." The weight of her warning settled like a shroud, suffocating and suffused with regret. Fighting against the terror creeping along the edges of my mind, I pressed on. The mist began to swirl eerily, coalescing into forms that seemed almost familiar. I stumbled backward, a sound escaping my lips that tasted of fear, metallic and bitter. Reverberating whispers slithered through the air, merging with my own erratic breaths, a lament of old souls trapped in this forsaken place. Suddenly, a glimmer of orange light flickered at the periphery of my vision. Instinct kicked in, leading me to what appeared to be an old lantern sputtering weakly, its frame gnarled and weathered. The moment I grasped the handle, the light began to pulse, igniting the mist into swirling patterns of crimson and gold. Panic clawed at my chest. What had I unleashed? The light spoke in a language older than the moon. It shone a path ahead, beckoning me forward as wisps of shadow curled away, reluctantly retreating. I was not alone. A multitude of eyes watched from the darkness, whispering long-forgotten chants of danger and despair. Every heartbeat intensified the atmosphere, each pulse resonating like the tolling of a distant bell. As I ventured deeper into the mists, I noticed familiar objects scattered around, the fragments of memories long buried. A battered teddy bear lay atop a stone, dulled with sorrow. A once vibrant drawing of a child clasping her mother's hand, torn and jagged. My breath caught as recognition hit me like a tidal wave. The lost child's essence lingered here, entwined in these remnants, a wound refusing to heal. The lantern's flicker grew frantic, illuminating more grotesque forms, twisted figures with hollow eyes sending chills down my spine. They murmured words I couldn't discern, dragging me closer to their eternal suffering. I dropped the lantern, its flame sputtering as a gust of icy wind curled around my ankles, wrapping me in its grip. I had to move, to escape their maddening cries. Panic ignited my senses as I turned, heart racing. Shadows rushed past me, clawing at my limbs, whispering of salvation laced with despair. You sought the truth. Now it seeks you. Just when I thought I could escape their grasp, a pair of piercing eyes blinked into focus from within the mist. A visage I recognized, the boy. His features were obscured, dripping with darkness that contorted his shape. He opened his mouth, yet no words emerged, just a howl of despair cut through the air. A desperate plea curling around my heart, chilling my blood. Fate cannot be altered, he implored. These are not mere shadows you traverse. They are truths sealed in sorrow. You cannot change the past. The shadows danced around him, forming grotesque figures that echoed his agony, enveloping me in a whirlpool of emotion. I couldn't breathe, the weight of my choices pressing down, crushing me under their enormity. Before I could respond, the ground trembled violently, fissures appearing as tendrils of darkness erupted from the earth, snaking toward me. I turned to flee, the mists forking and twisting, forming paths that led me deeper into the encroaching horror. I stumbled through the chaos, seeking an escape, as thunder echoed overhead. The mist began to solidify, morphing into horrific shapes that whispered eternal agony. All the while, the boy's anguished wail propelled me onward, a dirge that infested my mind with dread. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath my feet, and I found myself tumbling into a chasm, clawing at the air. The world spun around me as the silencing void swallowed my screams. I landed hard on a surface that felt like flesh, slick and pulsating beneath me. As I fought to regain my footing, I caught sight of a grotesque figure looming in the darkness, and the pain in its sunken eyes mirrored the boy's anguish. Everyone must face their choices, it rasped, pulling the shadows closer. Are you prepared to sacrifice your soul to uncover the truth? The question hung in the air like a guillotine suspended over my head, my heart racing as the abyss yawned wider. And just as I decided to answer, the shadows surged forth, eager to claim me, an avalanche of despair crashing down. What will you choose? The voice echoed, fading, as all light dissipated into a suffocating silence. And then, the whispers began. They spoke my name, my fate entwined in their tortured breaths. The question remained unshackled in the depths of the void, teasing at the edges of my existence. As the chaos swirled around me, I could not escape. What sacrifices would emerge from the depths of this chaos? The night had just begun. I felt a cold shiver ripple through me as the shadows locked me in an unyielding grip, pulsating with the weight of unspoken evils. The grotesque figure loomed above me, its elongated limbs writhing as it beckoned me closer, whispering the secrets of the universe in a voice that twisted my very essence. To know is to suffer, it rasped, the words curling around my heart like barbed wire. Around me, the once familiar landscape had transformed into a realm where light and darkness battled for domination. The air thickened, suffocating me and igniting a desperate energy. I gazed into the abyss where the ground breathed, alive and writhing, and realized with dawning horror. I was not merely in the grips of an entity. I had tumbled into the very heart of dread. Choose wisely, the figure intoned, its sunken eyes boring into my own with a gravity that churned my stomach. Every truth comes at a cost. Every revelation demands a sacrifice. The reflections of the past danced in the dark, intimate moments now twisted into grotesque paradise. Was as if the very fabric of my life had unraveled in this nightmarish expanse. Behind me, the boy's face emerged from the shadows, contorted with an agony that was infectious, crackling with the desperation that bound us both here. Don't listen to it, he begged, anguish straining his words. You can't barter with despair. It will take everything. His warnings played like a haunting melody in the chaos, drowning me in darkness even as I yearned for illumination. A flood of memories surged forward me, painful choices. The loves I had lost, the paths untaken swirled around me like a cyclone of sorrow. Each fragment cast its voice upon the air, merging into an incoherent chorus of regret. Was this what I truly wished to confront? In this realm, could I bear the weight of every truth hidden away? Suddenly, a more powerful force of gravity pulled at my essence, dragging me closer to the grotesque figure. Its smile spread wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth, glistening with an otherworldly hunger. Behind it, a backdrop of writhing shadows whispered. They seemed to be alive, each dark tendril palm-like, yearning to reach out for me. Let go, the figure coaxed, gliding closer, a mere breath away. Your fear is a door. Let me unlock it. As the shadows gathered around my feet and slithered up my legs, I dug deep within myself, battling against the urge to succumb. I recalled the mother in the Drawinga gentle face, serene amid turmoil. The weight of her spirit pulsed within my breast, a flicker of warmth amidst the chill. Could love break the chains of despair? Your choice, the figure hounded, manipulating the very essence of time, will determine who you save and who you lose. The boy's voice rose above the cacophony, pleading fiercely despite the encroaching darkness. You can't change what's been done. Listen to your heart. I narrowed my focus, desperately searching for that flicker of warmth, clinging onto the flickering light of my purpose. I won't let you take them, I cried, even as the shadows consumed me whole, dragging me deeper into the abyss of futility. What if you have already lost? The figure smirked, a predator relishing its prey. The ground beneath me throbbed, and I realized this was not merely a battle of wills. It was a reckoning. What if your attempts to save them are the very chains that imprison? Then came a rending sound, a split in the air that felt like a fracture in time. It tore through the whispers, momentarily freeing my thoughts from their paralyzing grip. The landscape warped, a screech of agony reverberating as the dark beasts recoiled, revealing an opening pulsating with light. But just below the surface, I felt a deep-seated dread that this illumination might be a trick, a deception masking eternal damnation. Would it lead me to truth or plunge me further into the depths of despair? As I strained to understand the path ahead, I plunged forward into the blinding light, only to find myself suspended in a vast emptiness, utterly alone. The shadows lurked just out of sight, whispering promises of horrors untold. And then, the world fractured again, its edges dissolving into an endless echo of cries. The boy's scream morphed into an excruciating wail that pierced my soul. Right before the light consumed me, I felt the unmistakable weight of a hand upon my shoulder, icy and ancient. "Do you know whose hand this is?" A voice echoed through me like thunder, sending ripples of panic spiraling into my core. As terror seized my heart, I turned slowly, dread sticking in my throat. What lay behind that question? What dread truth awaited my acknowledgement? The echoes of my name called out again, horrified whispers mingling with the boy's screams. I held my breath, bracing for whatever darkness awaited me next. And then, a striking realization, a flicker of memory that froze my heart. I had forgotten something crucial, something that could change everything in that moment. I lifted my head, ready to confront the horror, but the abyss beneath me cracked wider, ready to consume me alive, and the shadows surged forth with a furious hunger, leaving me no time to choose. As the darkness clawed at my leg, tendrils wrapping tightly, I prepared for the final revelation if there was any hope or salvation left. But before I could grasp what was unfolding, whispers crescendoed into a terrifying wail that echoed into oblivion. Undulating like a storm, would I discover the true weight of my sacrifice? Or was it already too late? The world around me quaked, a breath away from shattering into oblivion. Darkness, alive with a malevolent pulse, surged beneath my feet while the cold hand on my shoulder seemed to anchor me to a reality I was not ready to confront. "You cannot escape what you are," the voice intoned, deep as the night and tremulous with age. It roiled through me, stirring memories that lay buried, frayed edges reaching out like skeletal fingers as I wrestled with that revelation. I felt the shadows tighten their grip, resolving into sharp tendrils that writhed like vipers. They weaved into my consciousness, unearthing the darkest corners of my mind, flooding me with visions of what I'd done. Each glaring truth was a shard of glass slicing into my spirit, revealing the torment I had inflicted not just on others but on myself. "Remember," it urged, pressing its icy fingers against my pulse. "The truth shall set you free, but at what cost?" Suddenly, I was ripped from the stillness of the void and landed back within the swirling chaos. The memory of the boy flashed before me. His anguished face morphed into brief flashes of those I had failed. My mother's soft lullabies, the fledgling innocence of lost friendships, the agonized bemusement of betrayal. Each image clawed at my heart, enfolding me with remorse. Just then, the boy materialized at the edge of my vision, his eyes wide with terror, imploring me with a desperation I almost couldn't bear. "Please," he cried, voice rasping. "The truth isn't worth the pain. Don't let it take you from me." His face contorted as shadows clawed at his form, dragging him closer to the churning maw of darkness. A primal fear surged through me, intertwining with the visceral need to save the boy. I could feel the roots of despair coiling around my heart, tightening like a noose. "I will not abandon you," I shouted, but my words were swallowed by the cacophony forming around me, a defiant birth of might and madness. The grotesque figure stood taller now, feeding off the dread reverberating through my being. "You think you can save him, don't you?" it belched, voice riddled with amusement, like wind scraping through a cemetery of secrets. "But what if saving him means losing everything else?" It was a taunting question that opened the floodgates of my deepest fears. What if love was merely another shackle? The ground rumbled beneath me as visions warped into grotesque parodies. My mother weeping, the boy's visage fading, friends turning against me, betrayal reflecting in their eyes. Darkness seeped into my memories, leaving behind festering wounds, questioning each relationship I held dear. Could I truly save anyone if I were forever condemned? I saw the boy struggle against the dark tendrils that grasped at him, inching him closer to some unspeakable fate. "Help!" he cried, the pitch of his voice crumbling like glass in my own heart. Yet doubt gnawed at me. Was this what I was meant to confront? Was I drawn to this place to betray him, to reconcile with the demons of my past? The shadows around me thickened, congealing into figures I recognized, all the faces of those I had wronged, their ghostly forms dancing in macabre ballet, expressing pain woven through their whimpers. They merged, writhing in grotesque agony, revealing truths I had long cast aside. The mother who had sacrificed so much, the friends betrayed by silence, the lover quietly weeping for the love lost. Your greatest horror awaits, the shadows hissed, teasing the edges of my sanity. I felt their clammy breath against my neck, whispering dark secrets that sought release. Just then, the boy's voice cut through the veil, a beacon of light amidst the storm. You can change it. Whatever you choose, they'll be with you. In that moment, flickers of the bliss I remembered returned, moments steeped in joy, the laughter shared, the warmth of human connection, all juxtaposed against the encroaching blackness. The figure surged forward, its jagged teeth glistening with the temptation of invincibility. You want to save him? Then embrace despair. You are bounded by your choices. Everything piled on me weighted me down, threatening to drown me in chaos. With each moment that passed, the boy writhed, his agony intensifying as I felt myself spiraling deeper into my own dread. Make a choice, the figure roared, the words ripping through my mind with a violent crack. Then, in an act of desperate rebellion, I pulled free from the tendrils, summoning the last reserves of my will to reach out to the light ahead, the fleeting promise of hope. But just before I grasped it, a whisper curled into my ear, insidious and mocking. Was it your choice to save him that will consume you, or something far more sinister? The ground trembled once more beneath me, fissures splitting open, threatening to engulf both the boy and me as the true depth of the forthcoming sacrifice unfurled before my very eyes. There, framed in that profound chaos, unfurling with the blazing intensity of a dying star, I glimpsed the two futures spiraling away from me, each wrapping around my heart like a vine, choking out the last whispers of free will. With a final scream of terror, I lunged for one, but darkness crashed around me, and all I could perceive was the boy's terrified gaze locking onto me. A final, paralyzing moment shared just before everything imploded into a swirling vortex of shadows and screams. And as my world collapsed, I saw a shadow detach from the void, its elongated fingers stretching towards the boy, intent on claiming what's left of my shattered soul. As I fell deeper into the abyss, the darkness engulfed me, swirling around my mind like smoke suffocating a fire. Time lost meaning, stretching and contracting into nothingness, and I was left hanging at the edge of existence, tethered only by the boy's anguished cries resonating through the turmoil. You can't save us, he begged, his voice wavering, imploring me not just to reconsider but to absolve myself from the very essence of pain that had brought us here. But deep down, I felt an insatiable thirst for knowledge whispering in the recesses of my mind. Could I really unravel the threads of fate? Could understanding lead to salvation? Was there a truth hidden within that would release us both? How far was I willing to go to reclaim the lost souls around me? As these questions clawed at my sanity, the entity's chilling laughter echoed, feasting on my wavering resolve. You are here because of your past, it sneered, the shadows swirling around its form growing thicker, pulsating with dark energy. You opened a door no one should have, and now its twisted smile widened, revealing rows of jagged teeth gleaming wetly. You will face the consequences. Images flashed violently in my mind, faces of the lost, each no longer mere memories but spectral forms pleading for release, each reflecting my greatest fears. I could see the light of the boy fading, devoured by shadows, leaving nothing but hollow echoes. You have to fight, I screamed into the void, even as a wave of despair threatened to drown me. No longer could I dwell in silent terror. I had to make a choice, and a sudden, unearthly calm, a flicker of clarity emerged. The book I had discovered, the one that promised knowledge at a price, was not just a tool for understanding. It was a weapon, a divine contract buried within its pages that held the very fate of our souls. I reached deep within me, pouring my essence into the invocations buried in my heart, knowing that to awaken the truth meant confronting that which sought to claim me. I will not succumb. I howled defiantly, forcing myself to focus, to call forth every ounce of strength I possessed. The air crackled as I channeled the darkness swirling around me, twisting it back against itself. Shadows circled my feet, ensnaring my legs, trying to bring me to my knees, but I summoned the warmth of remembrance, the love, the joys, the moments I had taken for granted. "I reject you," I shouted, my voice cutting through the howling darkness. "I choose to set them free." The laughter of the entity transformed into a furious roar, reverberating against the walls of existence. Bolts of energy surged from my being, colliding with the black haze, and for the first time, I could see them, the faces of those lost, trapped in torment, appearing in fleeting glimpses. They were all around me, horrified, hopeful, confused yet eager for release. The boys' cries morphed into a gentle hum, guiding me deeper toward the shadows, where each whisper began to take shape. They yearned for liberation, just as I did, and then, a realization dawned upon me. The truth I sought wouldn't just liberate me but would weave our fates into one. I concentrated furiously, pouring every memory of love and regret into the spell I would cast to sever our bindings. The weight of the book felt light, as though it were now a conduit of our joined sufferings, mingling sorrow with hope, release. I bellowed, channeling everything I held sacred, and in that instant, a blinding light erupted from the depths of the book, illuminating the shadows and casting them into chaos. The very essence of our fears, once solidified in darkness, rippled and evaporated upon contact with the light, revealing silhouettes of hope dancing amid despair as the shadows began to retract. "You support your foolish sentiment," the entity screeched, its voice shattering the air, but I wouldn't relent. "You think light can bind us?" It launched itself at me, cloaked in rage, a storm of furious energy colliding with my resolve. But I stood firm, pouring my soul into the beam of light emanating from that cursed book. "This is not just my truth, but our liberation," the shadows screamed, morphing into monstrous forms that clawed at me. But the light only grew, swallowing them one by one, and just when I thought despair would take me, the boy began to shine. The warmth radiating from him sent tendrils of comfort spiraling through the darkness, and I felt our connection expand. Even as I battled the shadows, I reached out to him, pulling his essence closer, determined to weave our fates together. "Together," I roared, intertwining our souls, casting the weight of our shared memories towards the pulsing void. With one final bellow from the darkness, an explosion rippled like a storm, and the shadows screamed as they were driven back, leaving only the boy and me in the vast light. Yet, just as relief washed over me, the harrowing truth came crashing down. In that moment of brightness, it became clear while I may have set many free, one soul had to remain bound, either him or me. All my attempts to negate the darkness led back to the dreadful choice stripped of any solace. The weight of the truth felt like shards of glass piercing my heart. Was this my ultimate sacrifice? As I fell to my knees, the boy's eyes widened, his innocence shimmering beneath the soil of despair we both had come to know. "Please don't leave me," he screamed, his anguished cry blending with ephemeral memories of laughter and loss, the weight of the decision threatening to crush me under its enormity. I lifted my gaze, facing the remaining shadows that lingered, a haunting promise lingering like a veil. Racing forward, I reached out to the boy, embracing him one final time as the shadows recoiled, attempting to reclaim their lost treasures. "I can't let you succumb. I will choose to stay." My voice trembled through the fray, igniting the tether between us until I felt the heat of the boy's light meld with my own. The boy's form flickered, resonating with emotion and defiance. He gripped my hand tightly, and in that defiant moment, I felt the last vestiges of power surge. A blinding light enveloped us both, consuming the darkness around, illuminating the truth at long last. As the shadows dissolved, I felt us transcend into a realm beyond time, sealing our fate together yet apart, light entwined with shadow, lost in an echo that never faded. And as the final breath escaped my lips, the last whispers of hope echoed through the darkness, telling a story of sacrificial memory forged in pain and endurance. In choosing to stay, I have unleashed the darkness, but we shall remain. The boy smiled through tears, and I knew we would rise again, tethered, forever bound. As the shadows receded into the pasta truth lurking in the periphery of light, a haunting reminder that realities are born of both shadow and light, forever dancing on the edge of despair. And in that final, chilling whisper that hung in the air like a ghost of lost promises, I realized. When you give yourself to the darkness, the light never fully comes back. You become both victim and savior, forever wandering in search of what might have been, tethered eternally to the shadows of despair.